Welcome to episode 7 of Living the Podcast, brought to you by devs at Living Game. We discuss various topics in the gaming industry and give perspective as a growing company. In this episode, we're going to be discussing diversity. Let's start.
Cool.
I'm one of your hosts, Dave Brown. Alongside me, we have Joe Yates.
Hello.
Hello, Joe. We also have Ben Pope.
Hey guys, how's it going?
There he is. And last but not least, we have Mr. Alex Thompson.
Yes, that is me.
That was a nice little intro there, man. Like that. So, how you guys been doing? Huh? You guys ready for this deep topic?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've been ready for the past week, but now it's like I've forgotten everything the day before
Look,
the test.
Oh,
So
that always
it's
sucks.
just going to be crash and burn from here
That's
on
that's
out
fine.
for me.
I respect.
Actually, I think my new technique is going to be going last in the conversations, because then, like, it gives me a bunch of time to just think about what other people have said.
All right. Yeah, we could do that.
But that's also up to you. Like, I'll go first too.
I like going in the order of however Discord's got us going. That way, it gives me some direction.
Are you saying that you zone out so much in the podcast that you don't know who has spoken? Who
No,
hasn't spoken?
I would never. Jeez, man.
Yeah, sure.
But before we get into that,
Shay.
before we get into that topic, let's. I want to hear what you guys been playing. We haven't done this yet. I want to hear what you guys been playing. I've been playing a little bit of Assassin's Creed Origins. And,
Origins.
Oh yeah, I'm loving that game. Loving it.
I love watching the glitch, compilations.
Oh yeah.
It's good
Yeah,
stuff.
I gotta look into that.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed's always like just filled with glitches.
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
hilarious. I love it.
Especially when Unity came out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was big
Yeah.
time.
What about
Big time.
Joe and Ben? What about you guys? You playing anything?
I've been
Yeah.
playing a lot of Kirby, the new Kirby game that came out, and then Splatoon
Nice.
2, then Final Fantasy 15 are ones that I've been going back and forth on.
Alright.
Yeah, I've been doing recently Doom, so I'm trying to finish that, and also working on Life is Strange, the extra bonus episode that came out recently, and I just finished Shadow of the Colossus, the HD remake. Phenomenal.
Oh,
How
nice.
are the
So
controls in that?
awesome.
Did they improve them at all? Because I was playing Last Guardian, and good lord, those controls are pretty sticky.
Yeah, they kind of. It's funny because when I was playing it, it's an example. I was like, wow, I remember the problems I had with the first one. Because there were some of the things that it's just the way that the game was designed initially that you really can't overcome. And I think, because I saw that the company that redid it did a super awesome job with the graphics. It's a beautiful game. Like, the
Yeah, it looks
elements,
nice.
everything. But
Yeah,
they definitely have some of those original controls. I mean, because there's only really one way to do it. You know, the original design is kind of hard to like change without changing the fundamental game, I think. So I think they struggled with trying to, fix that a little bit. But it is a little smoother though when you're playing that game, the Shadow Colossus now.
Yeah,
sure.
the only thing that's pushing me through Last Guardian is because I like the bird dog. I don't remember what it's called, but
Yeah, I really want to get that next. It's that game was 10 years in the making. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to playing it. And,
yeah, that's
but they also have a VR version coming up of it too.
yuck.
So.
That's Last Guardian. Those games that have like awful life cycles that's a whole nother topic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
I heard that the control scheme is kind of wonky. And difficult to like manage. I haven't tried playing it, but just Team Ico, because I can't remember their actual name, the developers. It's just like I sort of wonder what actually goes on in their development, because it's so much like it's like a minimalistic, but at the same time there's so much like care put into every little detail that I wonder like how much time and effort and just things are actually going into every little thing, because as developers ourselves, you look at all these other games, it's like, well, this is clearly animation and these are like reverse kinematic in-betweens or something that lead to this, and these are hitboxes, and and you can kind of guess like, well, they were lax on the hitboxes and that's why it does like this, and that kind of separates certain like fighting games too. But anyway, so I'm still stuck in Dark Souls 3 apparently, because I'll never escape it.
Still playing that?
But this time, because I'm trying desperately to get some at least sweet kills with my Edgar Allan Poe setup, and then submit that to Sunlight Blade for his cosplays video coming up, hopefully. And that's about it. I mean, I started playing, Dancing Line on my phone occasionally. It's got good music. It's a one-tap game, basically an endless runner, and it's nice to pass the time occasionally when I just have to wait, either in my car or just waiting for something to render and I can't do anything else while I'm doing it or something.
Nice.
That sort of thing.
Well,
but I do have
yes.
Nier Automata downloaded, as well as the new Tomb Raider after seeing your stream of it, or like 10 minutes of that stream.
Rise of the Tomb Raider?
On YouTube. I don't think it's that. I think it was just...
that game's... Both of those games are really good.
I also... I downloaded it recently. I actually bought it a long time ago, but I just didn't download it. Axiom Verge, which I was really interested in playing, because I had never actually played like a real Metroid game. I know it's highly inspired by that, and it's like a sort of a love letter from a singular developer that worked on, I don't remember what they worked on, but like they were working for a studio, and then they were working on Axiom Verge in their free time over the course of like 5 years or something.
That's a cool game.
Actually, Axiom Verge looks amazing. It really looks amazing when I was looking at it.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, how you guys feel about getting in the topic now?
I'm all
You're all
warmed
warmed
up.
Everybody warmed up here?
I'd like to say one thing first before we get into it. I was just going to touch on Life is Strange a little bit, because it's just, that's an example of a game that I know you guys may have experienced this before, but where you hear about a game and you're like, yeah, okay, cool, and then you get into it and you're like, why didn't I get into this before? Because that game is just so, I think it's really unique. It's, your choices dictate different things, but I mean, the way that they did the game, they didn't hold back. The developer, which I thought was really cool, and they're also making Vampire, that new game, right? I believe they're making that one, but it's a really cool story, and the way that they did it is just a really cool design. And they're actually from Colorado too, the development company. So I thought that was really awesome to see them go into the console.
What kind of game
Sony
is it?
embraced
Is it like
it, right?
point and click or something, or is it like a?
Well, it's an adventure game. I would consider it, with the story. Your choices dictate the overall end result of the game. But it's kind of hard. I mean, I've been trying to pinpoint exactly what it would be. I mean, adventure is the closest I can come to, because you're going through the life of these girls and you're living, the stories, and you're interacting with it. But it's more of like, I don't know, it's like a reality. It's almost like a sitcom. It's really hard to explain, like, in a niche like that. But definitely worth checking out. I think the first episode's free, I think, on PlayStation 4 to try out.
Check it out. So
But,
it's like an
I was just
episodic
blown
thing.
away by them. It's an episodic game, and I was just really blown away by their creativity in the game designers and the way that they did the story, because there's a lot of dark topics in it too that they handled in a really unique way. So yeah, I don't want to spoil
Creativity,
anything,
he says. Super
creative, man. One of the best endings I've seen to an episodic series, actually, in my opinion. I was blown away at the end of it, at the episode 5, so of the original.
So how would you feel if the main character was, assuming it's a male, changed into a woman?
So actually, the main character is a woman.
Ah, shit.
So
Dave, you're so fucking stupid.
Alright, well, now that I got my Dave way out of the way, let's go ahead and get into diversity here.
Your segue.
They are the best, man.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
Alright? So, here's the thing. What really brought this up to me, it didn't really strike a nerve per se, but I just find it annoying when people want to change things just for the sake of pandering to an audience. So the example I'm talking about is I saw something on Facebook basically saying, "Oh, let's turn Link into a girl the next game. Link shouldn't always be a boy or a guy or whatever." And to me, that means you have to completely revamp everything that you have going on for the lore of a specific game, like in this case Zelda. Why do we need to see a female Link, like, as the protagonist? Like, why can't developers just tell their story without having to, again, pander to suggestions like this, I guess. Like, I'm trying to find a nice way to put it. But
Who are they pandering to?
well, themselves. So, like, let's say women or men want to see Link be a female just for the sake of having diversity. They want representation of themselves. There was another, I can't recall the name or the company of this specific game, but apparently there was this medieval game where it had mostly white people in it, and there was a lot of, like, they basically got shit on for not having more ethnic cultures in there, and the guy who was who's running the company and making the game, their defense was you wouldn't see a whole lot of other cultures in this specific town in this specific time. So I was just that's kind of my standpoint. Like, I want us to be able to create the stories that we want to make. Like, for instance, Rye Reveries, which we are developing. We don't need to make a female Edgar Allan Poe or a black Edgar Allan Poe or any other race. Like, we're making the game to our vision, the way we want to make it, right? And, like, how would you feel if somebody came down and said, "Oh, Edgar Allan Poe, he should be you should make him a female in the next one." So yeah, we'll start with Joe. I want to get your point of view on diversity for the sake of diversity.
So, touchy topic, in the sense that it's like they're very strong people on each side of of the coin, as you've seen pretty lately at least. But especially, I mean, the Link example it's kind of hard to compare to Edgar Allan Poe, since Link is technically a different Link in every single game, or at least most every single game. So if there was ever the need for a female Link, there could be one. But if my opinion of it all is whatever works, if it works, just do it. If your character's female, cool. If your character's male, cool. Like if you have an all white cast, cool. All black cast, cool. Like if whatever the character fits, and if they do their job the best, that's what they should be doing.
Right.
It shouldn't matter like what they look like, who they are, and just for the sake of having. It just is. It's something that, like, I get in a way, because if there's an all white cast or whatever, there's might be a group of people, I don't know who, that might not relate to the character for whatever reason because of that. But if it's just shoehorned in there, is that really any better than just having what it's more or less meant to be? I feel like it's more. It feels worse to me to have to shoehorn something in there than doing it out of like the want of the storytelling, of my lack of a better word, heart of actually doing it. So I think it can be a silly thing, but there's both sides of the coin that you can look at to see why people might want it, and why certain like groups of people might want it to be able to better relate with a character or something. And there are people who see a character for that, and there are people who can relate to a character no matter what. But it's always a very vocal group of people, and sometimes they could probably be considered the minority of people who are very loud towards wanting these certain things of like diversity and whatnot. When especially like Zelda's and Mario games and stuff are more about gameplay than, well, I guess Zelda, Breath of the Wild more about gameplay.
So it's a vocal minority.
That's how I've always felt, especially with a lot of like hot button issues, that it's a very vocal minority that make a certain group of people like put them in a light they're not normally in. So it's kind of almost grouping people based on a vocal minority. So all women think this because these articles from this women's magazine written by a woman said this. So that's what they're all think. That's what I feel happens a lot of the time. A lot of people are kind of shoved into these groups of, okay, so we have to appeal to these to the African Americans, we have to appeal to the women, we have to appeal to the Asian population, and we can't just think of people as people. Sometimes we're too busy almost putting them in little boxes so that we know that everyone is being represented, instead of being like, okay, so there are all these people in the world, so we can just put them all in the same box, and just make a game for them.
Before we move on to Ben, I just want to clear up one of the references I was talking about. It was Kingdom Come Deliverance. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They apparently they're getting. Excuse me. Apparently they're getting a lot of slack. Basically for having an all white, cast, and basically their whole stance on it. Ben, what do you think? You're an owner of this company actually, so I'd like to hear what you would have to say.
Yeah, this this is an interesting topic, especially because I analyzed this a lot with, the media. Because the problem is the media blows everything out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
So you have serious topics of like, diversity and certain groups aren't being represented, right? So then you have that, and especially there's oppression to so there's this history, and so what happens is people take a couple examples and they blow it up. Okay, well, oh my God, and they blanket statements. It's kind of Joe made reference to it, and it's just black and white thinking, and not no pun intended there. It's so what you're doing is you're saying, well, you either oh my God, you don't have any of this diversity in this game, but what is the story of the game? See, I think that they get lost in the like what are they trying to get across in the story? What is the game about? Will the story make sense if you throw in that diversity? Like, and I think that's where you're going to as a designer and a developer.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that actually Peter Jackson made reference to is with the Lord of the Rings. It really stuck out to me. Okay, as a good lesson, like because when he made Lord of the Rings and he did the different movies and he did the Return of the King, it, and I was watching the special features and I was watching the bonus content and I was watching an interview with him and he said, you know what, I either put everything in and they don't like it because it's too long, and then or I cut it out and I put it in the special features and they didn't like it because I cut it out, but then to have it over here, but I gave it to them, but either they don't like this or they don't like this. So I think when you're developing something, you want to what is your direction going? And you're not going to please everyone, and I think you're trying to tell a story, and if you change everything to please everyone, I think that's the dangerous road to go down in general. Like if that universe, they're different universes, right? So think about different game universes. Some of them, like the Mass Effect, is a really good example of diversity for me. If you play the Mass Effect games,
Mhm.
because they have all these different alien races and you know different genders and just all kinds of stuff, right? Because it makes sense in the Mass Effect universe.
Yeah.
Star
They
Trek,
they
Star Trek really. What's
I
up?
was gonna say they're one of the first games I remember like you being able to choose to be like a specific race,
Hmm. Oh yeah,
species, um,
it's definitely
your
definitely one of the first that you could
sexual
you
orientation.
could actually you could be yeah your sexual orientation. So I know that they went very diverse in that game.
Mhm.
Star Trek actually pioneered the idea of diversity as a futuristic vision. I know that Gene Roddenberry had this vision of it, and that was very early on. I mean, that's a really good example of somebody who pioneered it because it made sense in the universe, and you got to stress that enough because they're in this space, right? They're in space, they're flying around with different planets, different races, different alien race. It makes sense that this isn't put on the Earth because if he would have made Star Trek in the universe on Earth at the time, it wouldn't have made sense, right? But it was this vision that he had. So I think that people get lost in, oh well, we need to include everyone. Well, it doesn't make sense to the plot. Does it make sense to the person, the market you're trying to target? No. It will help you tell your story, and I think that's really where you want to go to. Is does it help the story? Does it help the gaming experience to have those people in it, or not? And does the movie, same thing. Will the movie be, be a better experience because you've done that? But I also think that one of the things you can do to do diversity, like with Link, for example, it's also the same thing they're doing with Doctor Who. You know how they're gonna have a female Doctor Who, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Dude, it's like Link. Like Joe's referencing that each Link is different, right? In a way, so you can do it if it makes sense like that. Like Doctor Who regenerates, right? So you don't know what it's gonna be. You don't know who he's gonna be. It's a random shot in the dark, basically, as far as who he's gonna regenerate into.
Mhm.
Makes sense. It could be a woman. It's written into the story. And I think with Link, it's something that you could kind of it's believable. And I think some of the things actually with like Mass Effect, for example, you allow the person to go that way if they want to, right? You give them the option,
Mhm.
and if they want that experience, yeah, okay, cool, go for it. And I think that's something that you could easily do for diversity if you want to design games to allow it. Is give people the option to customize, and I think customizing is a huge piece. Like Bethesda's done it a lot for a long time. They've actually done it way before Mass Effect. It was in Elder Scrolls 3, and even maybe earlier. You could be a female character, right? Ultima did it a long time ago. Origin, did it a long time
Mm.
ago. Actually, they were earlier before that. So if you know your gaming history, Ultima was a series, actually, and it stuck out in my mind. It's Ultima 7 Part 2 Serpent Isle. It was one of the very first RPGs that got me into RPGs. It was a Western RPG, not Japanese. And it's very interesting because you could play a female character. It was one of the very first times you could. And you could play a male character, and you could actually have intimate relations as a lesbian in the game. And it was very, like, whoa, the first time that you could do that.
Shocking.
Because what they did is they took the storyline and they put the woman in there, and they allowed you to choose. And it was very, very early. It was about 94 when that happened, when that game came out. So I know it's not something new, but, that where they've tried to offer the diversity, it's been going on for a long time. So, I mean, as Joe said, the minority, they're the ones saying, hey, this is, the loudest, they're the ones speaking loudest. So it's definitely something that I don't know when it's going to get resolved fully,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, all I know is from a developer in a game, studio owner, we're trying to offer a vision, and I think that you just have to stick with your vision and what it is, and go with that.
Let's make sure you explain it in the lore, right?
Yeah, and I mean, as long as you're not, if it fits with that, I think one good example that I'll finish on here is something that Quentin Tarantino. This is a good example of this, I think, in a way, where Django Unchained was just a cool example of, like, the time period pieces. You have time period pieces that make sense, right? For oppression, there was oppression in the show, right, in the movie. There's oppression in different pieces to different races, right? And that happens in different period pieces. But that makes sense, right? So it makes sense. It was not cool, for that oppression to happen with, non-diversity at the time. But during that time period, it was okay. Like, it made sense in that time. And I think that's what people need to realize too. Is that, and what are they trying to get across? Okay, are they purposely trying to be non-diverse? Are they purposely going against that? Or is it just how they want to tell the story the best way they can? And I think that's what I want to do. What is the gaming experience in the end for the user? I think that's what you need to look at. So, thanks.
Another thing I kind of pulled up while I was listening was Horizon Zero Dawn. Have you guys played that one? Like, I haven't, so I don't really know the story about it or anything. But I do remember that one.
My girlfriend has the game, but I haven't played it yet.
I just know bits and pieces of it. I believe I have it on my PS4. I just haven't played it. Haven't really found the time to play anything.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there's an article here from Polygon. The writer's name is Susanna Polo, if you want to go read the whole thing. But basically, it's saying how Horizon dealt with diversity and how their racial diversity was no mistake. Basically, I'm just gonna skip to the bottom because they do go into, like, how some people, like some other games, are using lore as an excuse, but apparently Horizon, did it well because they actually go and explain in the lore why everybody's a different color. Because apparently, I guess apparently, the protagonist is part of a tribe or something like that, and there's like multiracial people in the tribe. And I mean, I remember hearing, like, good and bad things about that, like people being on both sides saying, "Oh, this is great," and then, "Oh no, that's stupid. If it's a tribe, they should be the same." Blah blah blah. It's just like, sometimes I feel like people can't make up their minds. But I'll quote from here. It says, if you can, from her article, it says, if you can make up some lore that explains why everybody's white, you can also do as Horizon Zero Dawn did. You can make up some lore that explains why everybody's a different color. So, I mean...
Yeah, that makes sense to the story, right? I mean, that's why they did, and
I mean, that
the
goes back to what
gameplay.
both of you said so
Yeah.
far. And now we got our anchor rolling up here. Alex, what do you say about all this?
Oh, well, I definitely agree with everything you guys have been saying. I would say what matters most is what you're trying to, I guess, project or uh, express with the game that you're building. And I think that we did kind of luck out a bit in Rye Reveries because, like you said, you're not going to have a female Poe. He was an actual person. These are actual stories, and there's also going to be actual characters in it. Now, there are going to be a lot of characters that are just not mentioned in the stories that, you know, are included for gameplay purposes. And I had thought about, what kind of types of people they would be and what races they would be and stuff like that. But what's really nice about that is that in one of his stories, the uh, the murder in the Rue Morgues, there's a lot of diversity already in that story, so I don't even really have to explain it. Even though it might end up coming up in the game at some point, because people are like, "Why are there so many different people in France?" kind of thing. But yeah, like they talk about a German and an I think an Irish person, and there's like Norway is involved in his stories, and Italian, and of course French and English. So it's kind of all over the place, but a lot of them are still mostly some kind of shade of white, and they definitely did have like quote unquote slaves back then too. And I really haven't fully grasped how I'm going to even approach that topic, but I think if I approach it well, it could definitely, help sort of, I don't know, paint a picture of that landscape or that time period that Poe was living in, or it could grossly like misconstrue or what's it called, like communicate what was actually going on. And I think that diversity is always a really nice thing, but the problem comes with like what you guys were also saying is diversity just for the sake of diversity. Like there's as long as it makes sense, like you're saying with the Zero Dawn example, within the lore of the game, then you can kind of do whatever you want. But I think that it's also important that those are actually rooted somewhere in reality, so that people can sort of learn about other cultures and what is good or bad about certain things based on their own beliefs, because we can only see things from our perspective, which I think I've said before is why I believe diversity is really important when both building games and just in the workplace in general. Is because people see things differently, have different life experiences that come to like different decisions, and that's why you can really screw up like a certain character in some games, because you wouldn't expect this person to be acting this way based on their background, and that's a misrepresentation of what that would be. But then you can also go the complete other end and just stereotype them all to hell, and that's definitely been done before too. But what I think is really interesting is that because like games are just so I guess tangible now, like there's so many there's lots of different softwares that make it much more accessible. That's what I mean, accessible actually. Um, Both in terms of like platforms and just the type of people that play games and stuff like that. And especially with indie scene, like that we're always been about, you know, having really out there ideas and kind of just doing something for the sake of doing it. In the case of like larger companies that already have a rooted thing, I don't think that having a particular main character that players can't change or choose what they do is really going to help them at all, and that's sort of like a money thing, which it kind of sucks like for some of the people that do want to be represented, because I honestly can't really understand fully as much as I would like to how a girl feels playing like The Legend of Zelda. And like Joe was saying with the vocal minority, like I'm sure plenty of girls don't care at all. They really enjoy The Legend of Zelda for the story. They don't even really have to project themselves onto Link to enjoy it, like as a character or whatnot. But there are probably plenty out there too that wish that they were actually playing a girl and, you know, having more girls and stuff. And that really kind of seems to be, I would say, the main like diversity breaker thing when it comes to games, because there's always been such sort of talk and controversy around it's a man's world and women being represented at all. And it also kind of comes down to just lots of different people's interests. And because a lot of game developers were men, they were developing for things that they thought other men would enjoy, like things that involved conflict and competition. Whereas now it's very, very mixed. So I don't think that it's really kind of important to be like, well, we need, you know, a girl version of this or a boy version of this. Because even if you think like that, there are already games out there that satisfy that completely. Like, I don't want to say, you know, every game similar in these, you know, environments is the same game or whatever, but to me, things like, oh crap, I can't remember what it was called, but I know the newer one, Celeste, is like a side-scrolling platformer, much in the same vein of like, I would say, like, I can't think of anything again, but I was gonna say Metroid, but that doesn't even make sense
Yeah,
because it's a
Celeste.
completely
Yeah, I see
different setting.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
going to Metroid, like the first one I ever played was Super Metroid, and like finding out that Samus was actually a girl after you died, I was like, holy shit.
correct, and that in some cases that is a good thing. Like that was especially because it was pushing, you know, boundaries, and it kind of snuck under people, because I wonder like how many people actually would have played that game if they knew she was a
Right.
girl to start with. Would they have the kind of outrage that you might have seen from that or not? But then there's also the case of like, you know, say the main protagonist is a girl, but they just act like a guy, and there's nothing really about their character that really makes them a girl for a reason, which, you know, like you guys were saying, goes back to having diversity for a purpose for the game. And like a couple of games that come to my mind that I'm thinking about now too, and I think I was going to make this point a little bit ago, but I honestly have no idea where I'm at in my little weird train
Back
that I'm
at
on.
the Alex
But
Tandon
I was thinking of,
podcast.
yeah, yeah. You guys want to see what this looks like on a graphic calculator? It's going to be a mess. But anyway, so like one of the games I was thinking of was San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto, and like I always see a lot of memes and just jokes and things from it, and I think that I don't really have a huge interest to play it, but I would like to know, you know, a bit more about sort of black culture in that. I think that's the one that is mainly about African Americans.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
stuff like that.
you're black protagonist or antagonist, however you look at GTA games.
yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, do they just go really over the top with stereotypes? Is it much more like grounded and accurate? Because it's a game and it's meant to be fun and it's entertainment, excuse me, then I think that they would probably go more for over the topness, and not so much like a serious thing. Like you would definitely have its serious moments, but any story with that's just serious will, like, I think strain and stress the heck
Yeah.
out of people. So again, you want to have diversity in your story. There's like, you know, curves both in gameplay elements too. Like you can't just have high tension at all times, because it will like it'll wear out the player. You got to have those moments of relaxation. Also, let them sort of like reflect on sort of the intense moments that happened already, and it helps them not to get like bored with things that are not supposed to be boring at all. And then, I mean, you could also have a game where there's just not enough going on, so people get really bored. But I don't remember what you were saying, because it wasn't the Zero Dawn. It was something before that, and I was thinking about this article I had looked at recently.
The Deliverance. What was that even?
It might have been Deliverance, but yeah, it was probably in the same vein. But this is about Far Cry 5, and I don't know exactly when it's coming out or whatnot. But especially because, you know, of what's going on currently in America, there's a whole lot of talk and backlash about the particular subject matter for Far Cry 5. And yeah, like, in some cases it could be a really gross, like, misrepresentation of what those kinds of people are. But it's hard to really know that when you get so many, like, examples of it directly in your face all the time. And, like, I definitely haven't been in some parts of these countries, like this country, that would be, you know, these areas. But I have been in other parts that, you know, are pretty similar, it seems like, when I'm just walking around and overhearing people, like, eavesdropping on people at, like, Walmarts or something. And just hearing the kinds of things they say, what they talk about, and how they interact with it. But I would say, like, and this really sucks for me because I'm always checking my email on Yahoo, and then, like, the stories are usually something to do with Trump or something really controversial. I scroll down, and, like, the story, obviously, they're trying to create their own narrative. They may or may not be trying to be, you know, unbiased in any way. So it's hard to really kind of do anything unless you have multiple stories from other people talking about it. But then you go down the topics, and I just see, like, basically toxic people. And it's hard to tell if they're just being extremely sarcastic or if they're being, like, totally earnest in the way that they think. And I honestly don't think that anything I've seen so far from Far Cry 5 is any kind of misrepresentation of that environment. When you look at, like, the kind of, like, I thought, you know, somewhat religious but almost culty type, I would say maybe white supremacists or just other groups like that out in America seem like, you know, something that just didn't exist. But then now I've just seen accounts and people talking about this and that, and I don't remember exactly the details of it, but I do remember that I was looking at this one article through the ETC show that I like to watch on YouTube, and there was a church, and it was like, oh, it was the church that was honoring their guns as, like, crowns or something, and, like, everybody brought their gun to church and, like, prayed with it and stuff like that. And it was, like, originally supposed to be a Christian church, I guess, originally. I don't even know what it was.
Sounds weird.
But what they were worshiping at that point made no sense to me. Like, it was just nonsense. I'll have to find it for you, I guess, and, like, kind of explain. But yeah, it totally sounds like a cult. So, and the anyway, going back to, like, what the actual thing I started about is there was this sort of petition people were saying, you know, that they need to change things in Far Cry 5. They need to make it, like, more diverse. Like, these people that are, you know, white supremacists, you know, maybe there's a Mexican in there or a black person, and it just seems like, okay, well, that doesn't even make sense to me, you know, as the setting. And it's funny because the way that they kind of interpreted it was that now they're actually coming for the people that haven't been represented. And it goes back to kind of like, well, um, you know, if you're white, you're just automatically racist
Yeah.
because you're not anything else. And I I always hated that, and I always tried not to be like even the slightest racist. But I mean, I'm always gonna have my own personal like feelings about different people based on their history and their culture, and
or even the
I guess
situation
then
that you're in at the moment. You know?
yeah. So like, I guess racism is really kind of unavoidable. It's just a matter of like not taking it to the extreme and be like, well, I hate Mexicans or something weird like that. Um, and there's definitely entire cultures out there that are racist, but they don't like make a giant deal out of it all the time, I guess. Um, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I also saw this. It was a it was on another YouTube show, and it ended up being a tweet. I guess it was Planned Parenthood was joining in the conversation that I guess it's something that's kind of trending right now as people are like, in terms of Disney movies, when you talk about like mainstream and stuff. And I've already seen plenty of different YouTube videos of like, 10 failed Disney princesses that never came to light and things like that. And it's like, they want to have a Disney princess that is this or is this. And like, it's kind of where does it end with the mainstream? Like, again, it's entertainment, and this goes back to the whole indie thing. Because, you're an indie developer, you can make a game that is just about a very specific thing and then build upon that and like, sort of use that to be a platform to raise awareness about that particularly unrepresented group if you feel like passionate for it. But like, because it's a multi-billion-dollar company, like you can't expect them to just try and cater to very like small groups because it's just not financially
Feasible.
like smart to do. um and I guess the vocal minority, I don't even really know if it's a vocal minority anymore. I think that it always has been, but the problem is that so many people just kind of follow it. And what choice do they have? Because like I feel like everyone's just so busy now that we just have to kind of digest whatever's thrown in our face, which is sort of why like all that controversy around the Russians rigging the election and posting face ads and stuff like that is such a big deal. It's because people see this and then they just accept it. So even if it's just, a small number of people that actually feel a certain way, because they're so vocal about it, now it's like engendered a multitude more of people to think and follow in that way. But yeah, ultimately, I think that if you're going to have a character that is a certain race or a certain, like, was it like sexuality or just have certain quirks about them, it has to be have a purpose for it. Otherwise it's just kind of, there's no reason to do that, and by doing that without a reason, then you're actually kind of hurting whatever thing you were trying to do in the first place, and probably upsetting the people that you were actually trying to, I guess, support or show favor to. And I guess that's my wrap up.
All right, guys. Well, that's a pretty deep one.
You can go deep in diversity.
Again. And like back to the whole the hell was I trying to say? Vocal minority, and like those are the people that are just they're the ones that will just sit there and scream at the top of their lungs until something happens. I remember this happening with Mass Effect. It wasn't even a diversity thing. It was just these people didn't like the ending of Mass Effect 3 and really that whole trilogy. And I happen to be just fine with it. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, I was too.
I mean,
I never played it, but I do know that the original writer of the first two left on 3, and that could have like had something to do with it. But I think what people really hate is when you have all these choices and all these things compounding and having a ripple effect, because that's the whole thing about Mass Effect. And I don't think I played I think I only played the second one, honestly. But yeah, so like even I can understand like that kind of mentality towards the game. But then when you boil it down to just 3 choices, and everything else up to that point doesn't factor in, that really it mocked what the actual game was supposed to be, I think. But yeah, that is a really good thing to bring up in this situation, because I think that's the first time that players actually just had enough pushback on developers that they changed it. Like before then, it was kind of like, oh, the ending is bad, it sucks, or we hated it, but nothing was changed. There was no people trying to do petitions and stuff like that. So
I mean, but that's the thing. If we had the silent majority of the people who love the game, if they had done the same thing, sat there and screamed at the top of their lungs, do you really think anything would have happened? Like, do you guys think that EA would have either changed or gave out all this extra stuff just to satisfy these people that had such a big problem with it?
I think that they would just have to look at their numbers, because if you have 2 groups that are on completely different sides of something, and they're both screaming at the top of their lungs and presenting evidence and stuff like that, then it really does, I think, should come down to the feelings of the company and what they think is a good move, both for their optics as well as financially. But I definitely think that we're kind of in that situation, at least a little bit, with things related to the NRA and just gun control in general right now in America. And I would say I'm definitely on the side of gun control. I think that people just spouting about the Second Amendment rights that were written 200 plus years ago, and were at that time, guns were like a pistol that you could shoot 1 round and then had to take 5 minutes to reload it. So you had a right. It was definitely a defense thing. Even if you have a 6-shooter, you would still only get 6 shots before you had to reload. So yeah,
well, maybe that'll be our next topic, is gun control. What, I think we did that one already.
yeah, I think we did too.
Well,
I don't know. It's so ubiquitous right now. Even if we didn't talk about it, it's just on your brain.
You can have fresh material on it.
So
I wanted to comment on some stuff, because diversity is just something tied in with my hero, right? Which is Roberta Williams from Sierra Online. Right? She was the first female game developer. She owned a company. She ran it with her husband, right? And it was a very... It just stuck out to me, because this whole topic of diversity ties directly into my homage, my inspiration to get into all this was Sierra Online. And
I did not know that.
And that was, she did such a good job about it. She was driven. She did the work. And, it wasn't, I didn't like Roberta Williams, right, when I was a kid, because I was like, oh, she's a woman, and it's diverse. You know,
Yeah,
I
I have a
liked her
crush on her.
because of who she.
Girls are gross.
Well, she was awesome. You know, she turned out awesome games, right? And I think that's the thing that. So I'm gonna tie this into owning the company now, like in a way here in a second, but because she did awesome games, she turned out really good products. She owned an amazing company, right? That's why I liked her. You know, I respected her, right, for what she did. You know, her work. What did Roberta Williams do? Ken Williams and Roberta Williams are amazing people because of their work they did. You know, it's not just because, oh, well, he's a guy and she's a woman, right? And you know, a lot of people look at her as like the first woman, real, you know, major game developer woman who ran a company. But she also did good products, and it wasn't just because of her gender, right? So, and this actually ties in with something that I ran into myself as a, you know, as a company owner, because I actually had people ask me, like, hey, you know, what you should do is you should talk about, you know, your diversity on your company. You know, who's on the staff. So I've actually had this come up in the past. You know, how many women do you have on your staff? How many guys do you have on your staff? And I told him, I said, you know what? It's majority women. But I said, that really doesn't matter to me. What?
Well, yeah, that's actually things that people like go after you now,
Yeah.
especially if you get to be a bigger
Mm,
company. Because I remember seeing posts about like the original Google
mm,
staff and like people posting, you know, the ratios of race and things like that in the workplace, and they they use it to basically try to paint this picture that like because you know I'm black or I'm Islamic or whatever, um, I'm not going to get this job unless I was white. And frankly, as a white guy, and just how I've seen, you know, different places working and like colleges that
mm,
I've tried to go to and stuff like that, it seems like it's, you know, quite the
Yeah.
opposite. Like, because white is a majority, that there's nothing special about them, that there isn't anything that they could teach or add to this experience to other people. So they're not as actually as valued as other people. Um, and but then it's kind of like I do remember one of the part-time jobs I got when I was younger.
mm,
I only got because the manager liked me, and sometimes that's really all it ends up being. Unfortunately, it doesn't really have a huge deal with like, you know, if you were slightly better than this other person, if they like them a lot more, then you know that's definitely going to be a plus.
mm.
But that's something that people should try to strive for anyway, is to be like, you know, a better person to work with, not just produce better work,
Mm.
kind of thing. Um, and like I was just thinking, you know, when and you're talking about diversity or just how people project on different characters and like female link and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so I wonder when I'm playing games like Bayonetta, does a girl feel the same way if she was playing like God of War? And
Well, let me answer that
when
for
I was
you.
talking about,
A lot of females in the press seem to love Bayonetta. There's a strong female character using her sexuality to uh, be her character, but then God of War, well, God of War is sexist. So that
Well,
yeah, and I guess that's why it's like a much
that's the
more
press.
complicated thing to even get into, because if you were just looking at it like a binary, like it was like, you know, a computer thing of inputs and outputs, trues and falses, then the result should be what you would expect. Like, but again, there's so many differences with the different two different games, because like while both of them are kind of the same genre, uh, God of War is more about the brutality, which would appeal more to men, um, and Bayonetta is more about like the style and everything. And when they're talking about, you know, things are hypersexualized, at the same time, that just is, the female form. So
I
like,
mean, if you want to talk about sexualizing stuff, I would say Bayonetta is versus God of War. Yeah, you never actually see any nudity in Bayonetta, but everything's implied there. Um, but
yeah,
in
and it's extremely campy
Right,
and tongue
but
in
in
cheek
God
and
of
that kind of thing.
War, like, yeah, you see breast. That's it. Like, you don't actually see anything else going on except for the screen shoots off somewhere else, and you just hear you hear what's going on. Uh, but I mean, Bayonetta's had some moments where it's just like, did I really just see that? Like, the hell?
But I think it goes back too, because you know the hypersexualization, because that is very relative, and I think that's something that people is like, what's relative, what's sexualized to that person, because like I know that God of War is very masculine, boom, like, but it fits in Norse mythology.
Right.
It fits what they're going for. It's that very manly character, that aggressiveness, that fits with the North, like what they have. And Bayonetta, right? The whole idea is that her suit, like her hair, like the whole thing, it's kind of written into the story where that becomes her outfit, right? So it's like she's
Her hair is her outfit.
nude underneath, whatever. Yeah. So I mean, but that's her special powers. But I mean, I don't know. I played it before, right? I played Bayonetta 1, and I wasn't like, oh my god, oh wow. It was like, what am I, 15? you know, I was like, no, I'm interested in the mechanics. Like, I'm not sitting there like, wow, man. I wasn't caught up in it, and I find that interesting that everyone gets caught up in that, because I'm like, did you miss the gameplay? Because they have awesome gameplay there. Why did you get caught up in this? And I think some people get caught up on this just to get caught up in it. I think
Yeah.
there's an element too. They just want to point out things to point out things, even though the developer may not necessarily have wanted.
To be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
To
where is the
feel like
developer?
what they're saying is actually relevant.
Yeah, and their whole point of it was because her outfit would become that for the gameplay, right? It wasn't to have the sexualization, possibly. I mean, she is her physical form for Bayonetta is sexualized, but I mean, it's also
I mean,
part of the
she
culture. I
bends
don't know
over, spreads her legs, and takes
yeah.
pictures. Like,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, how is that any better than God of War?
Well, I mean,
I,
and it's a different. I mean, really, you need to hear from the developer. I mean, I
yeah.
think in these cases, like, why did you do this? Like, what were you thinking? And I think that's what we really need to hear from. Like, oh, well, we did this because, every design decision that we've ever made, right, as developers, has a reason, right? I mean, there's a reason why we have this. There's a reason why we have that. And there's nothing ever done in a game that has no meaning, right? And that's something I figured out when we started developing games. Is, okay, we have this room here for this reason. We have this character here for this reason. We have this character look like this for this reason. So there's a reason why they did it. So I mean, it's really about finding out why they did it. And I think there's a lot of talk, but you never really hear from the developer. Like, this is why I designed it. This is what I was thinking. So, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's what I like to hear. Why did the Bayonetta guys do this? Why did they make her hair into her outfit? Whatever. Like, why did that happen? That's what I want to know. Was it
Well,
too?
I think it's probably because, hair. Well, I think that part of it also has to be like, because hair is, a defining feature both in fashion and of like personality and just identity for women. And because it's her hair, it kind of goes in with, that is part of her identity or whatnot. But going on to like developers and stuff, I believe that it was, a man that came up with Bayonetta, and possibly, probably a man that came up with God of War. But there's definitely like cases where, a story is completely different when it's told from a man versus a woman. And I wouldn't want to design a game specifically, you know, uh, about like women things unless I actually were one, you know. I think that I would have a better perspective and be able to build a better experience about the things that I'm familiar with. Uh, and I think that's what's kind of interesting and cool about when you're talking about Roberta Williams, because like if she was kind of one of the people laying the groundwork for, I'm sure she wasn't the first one to do an adventure style game, but you know the games that she came up with were less about like conflict and more about resolving conflicts, more about problem solving and less about like gaining levels and like overcoming bosses and
Right.
things like that. More about like finding solution or just whatever. And that's you know people will say that's kind of like a stereotypical way of thinking about women or whatnot, but that's my feelings on it anyway.
Yeah, she actually, with Roberta Williams, it's very interesting because if you look at their history, she was like, she saw a need. She was actually very driven, like problem solving, right? Which a lot of her games are adventure games. She made the very first graphical adventure game, Mystery House. So she was the very first one to be like, all these guys are doing text. I want graphics in it. And it's funny because her husband was a programmer. Boom. She's like, okay, I want this done. Let's get it done. And she drove the thing. Her husband just sat he was on the side helping her. Like she was manning the wheel, right? And it's funny because she was very, if you would have put this way, she's very driven like, stereotypical, the guy would, do. So she was very in control of everything. I want this here, but she designed the direction. And it's funny because I always think about, would the game have been as enjoyable from a guy's perspective, if it was a guy character. And the very first of her games that I played, it's funny because it was the woman one. So she had this King's Quest series, which is she's the most well known for, but she had a lot of other series. But she had King's Quest, and the very first one I bought at the store was King's Quest 4, Perils of Rosella. It was such an awesome game. But it's funny because speaking of diversity, the very first game I bought from Sierra was the only King's Quest that had a female protagonist, and got me into the series because it was so well done because it was told from the view of a princess, right? So you have this princess who's thrown into, and she becomes a commoner because of the story, and this witch turns her into a commoner, and she has to learn how to be a princess again. It was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that before because that was 1985, I believe. And I mean, such a unique story, right? And that got me. And all the other stories are guys, so all the other ones have male protagonists. But it makes sense for the story that you're trying to tell. And it's funny because a lot of our other characters are females, but it makes sense from the way a female would approach it. And that's something Alex brought up. A female character is going to approach something more emotionally in the games. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be, like generalist there, but it fits with what you're trying to do. So, with Rosella, it's a more emotional storyline, right? In a different way. But in the other game, you play the prince, and you're kind of handling things in a problem-solving way. So she does kind of bring in stereotypes, but she does it in such a unique way in the way that she does the design work that it fits, right? It doesn't seem overly done. She has the male characters tend to have the battles, right? And the female with King's Quest 4, she outwits people a little bit more. So she does use those stereotypes, but she uses it in such a integrated way that you're like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense. And, it kind of fits with what I'm going for. But the female characters are so powerful in a lot of Sierra games that you're like, wow, these characters are so awesome. Yeah, they just stick out in your mind. But she does have a good balance, I think. Sierra, she does allow for really awesome female characters, but she does also have King Graham, right? So she has these awesome, awesome characters. She showed a really good diversity ability to do that in her game design work. She has a whole entire male, characters that really will stick out in your minds too. So Sierra Online has done a really good job of that. They have a wide range of games, but they don't go one way or the other. They have a nice balance. Right. So I think balance is key. But again, it's all dependent on what story you're trying to tell. Are you trying to tell the princess story, the king story? Are you trying to tell a mystery story with a female investigator? Right? I mean, what are you trying to do? And they stick by that the whole way. Like they don't change it for diversity. They go with what are they trying to tell, what is their end all goal, and that's where they're going for. And actually, it's something I want to touch on with the studio. Like I was talking earlier with the males and females, right? Who we have on staff. I told someone, I said, you know what? It doesn't matter to me the gender or the race. It's what can that person do, right?
Yeah.
Can they do the job awesomely? What is their ability, right? Whoever it is, what can they do? And then that's what you look at.
Yeah.
So that's what I look at.
I mean, the fact is, we have multiple people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Like, we got people from Peru. Where was Casey from?
She's from over in Asia. I know, like her family's from there.
And then maybe I was thinking of Rani. Where is she from? Was it?
She is from Dhaka.
I have no idea where that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a common thing. Yeah, but I know where that is.
I mean, like, we're a pretty diverse company, and it's not like we try to do it on purpose. It's just we all have a common goal. We're all trying to reach it. But
yeah, and I mean, basically, whoever can do the job.
Diversity is not so much like something you look for in a person, but it's just something that they, naturally add to their ability to work or whatnot. Like, it's not like, oh, well, we need a person, blah, 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 from this, culture, this race, so that we can have this or whatnot. Now, in some cases, you definitely would want that, like certain experts about the history of different areas that you've never visited, kind of thing. And I think that's partially why people were really upset about Far Cry 5, because I don't know if it's just the France office that's like in charge of it, or if they have like a U.S. branch that's doing most of it, but that's part of like fuel to that fire, is people think that they don't know anything about America.
Well, the culture, it's something that stuck out to me, what you guys were talking earlier, right? The culture, like Grand Theft Auto, one of the main reasons why I got into Grand Theft Auto was because my friend told me, hey, you know what? He literally told me, he was like, Philip, he's like, you know what? There's this game called Grand Theft Auto. It'll probably be taken off the shelves soon. He's like, it's really controversial. You need to go pick it up. I was like, whoa! I'm gonna go do it right now. So I went to Walmart and I picked it up. the very first Grand Theft Auto. I went and picked it up just because it was controversial. Because I was like, I have to see what they're doing.
Right.
I have to know what this is about. And the very nature of Rockstar games, not so much in the early days, and not all their work, but especially their Grand Theft Auto work, Bully, all those other ones, they go for that controversial culture.
Yeah.
So by having the controversial themes and topics, that is like part of their nature. Like, that is part of their business model. So by having those, it kind of fits with there. You know what I mean? Like normally you wouldn't do that, but Rockstar Games, I always said that their lawyer must have like what ironclad underwear or whatever because he's a tough guy like because every time they go in they've had so many lawsuits and different stuff, but it's part of their nature. Like when you think Rockstar Games, I always think controversy, something
Well, here's a
crazy that they've
controversy.
done.
I've always thought Saints Row was a better game anyway.
See, in Saints Row, actually, that's the funny thing because Saints Row went the serious route. I was talking to somebody about this a little while ago. Saints Row went the serious route until 3, and then they went, oh, okay, well,
Oh
GTA.
no, it's the other way around. GTA went super serious around 4, and then Saints Row
around
played
4,
up
yeah.
on the whole. Let's exaggerate every possible thing we can.
Yeah, and then they went crazy on 3.
Yeah.
I think it was 3. They went like nuts, yeah, because they're like, well, we have to compete with Rockstar, right? And then they went just kind of crazy. They were like, well, let's go goofy and like you can fly and you can ride a hover craft through the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but their audiences are different. Their audiences are totally different. So Saints Row market is totally different than the Rockstar Games GTA market.
Well,
so.
How you guys feel about wrapping up now? I did.
I feel pretty good about it.
Joe
Joe
died.
Nah, they just it's like the
He will not be
last
here next
45
week.
minutes they just flap their lips. I'm just like, just go ahead.
It's okay to interject.
Hey man, you have to learn to be more rude.
Well,
And
exactly. I do it all the time. I've been doing it the whole time.
I love interrupting Dave.
Well, I'm gonna leave.
Dave? What?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
I'm gonna leave you guys with a little if I could talk. I'm gonna leave you with a controversial statement and then start signing off. Whenever I play a game and I can choose a gender, I always pick a woman. We thank you for listening to our podcast. You can find out more about Living the Game, like our games, studio updates, and events at live-in-thegame.com. You can support our efforts directly by backing us on Patreon at patreon.com/liveinthegame. Doing so will keep the podcast ad-free, so you don't have to hear about cook boxes in my undies. Right now I'm wearing boxers, but I'm sure no one would want to know that. Did you guys have anything you wanted to plug?
You're just throwing some real zingers out there, buddy.
I am too.
Doing great.
Hey, I'm very lonely on Twitter, so tweet
Where?
me at AlexT_design. Just anything you guys want to talk about. I love talking about games. If you guys want to talk about topics that you'd like us to talk about,
As long as it's 120 characters
on the podcast. Oh, well, you don't have to do that. People do a lot of times. They like do 1 of 5 tweets, there's really no limit at this point. It's just it's easier for people to digest.
Well, yeah, I'd definitely like to say we have the upcoming Comic-Con. It's coming up in Denver, and we also have the DU Arcade coming up. So we got a couple events. The DU Arcade is April 28th.
Yes.
And DU Comic-Con Denver is the 18th. It's 17th to the 19th of June.
Yes.
So it's coming up for a little ways. So.
Sounds about right.
But we also may have Phoenix too, so I need to find out more. So we're on the rampage.
Ben, you want to plug the company social media? See if you remember.
Yeah, check us out on Facebook, also Twitter, and also Instagram. What are you saying? I don't remember.
What's the Twitter handle?
I have a website.
Oh my god.
There you go.
Twitter's.
Go to my website.
Yeah. So.
I already said the website.
No.
the,
I was saying my
Oh,
website.
your website.
this is the blooper section.
Like my
At
website.
Live in the Game 2
Just go
for
to
the
it.
Twitter. Live in the Game for
Tweet.
Facebook
So yeah, to
page.
follow us on the tweets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to throw
So
your
come
personal
by
one
and check
out
us
there?
out, and so let us know. What's that?
Do you want to throw your personal one out there?
Yeah. So check out my my own Facebook page at Benjamin Pope. So if you want to check out what I'm up to. Yeah.
Joe, how about you, man? You got a friend code you want to give out?
You got any more jokes you want to tell?
Sick burns, bro.
Yeah, dude. I got a website, joe-yates.com. Definitely message me there. I think I have a part that you can talk to me about work-related things on my games I've made. Come to you arcade. Got 2 games there, including Rye. And then I got, what else? I don't know. If you want to hit me up, message me on LinkedIn, and we can chittity chat.
Chitty chat.
Yeah, and anyone that wants to join us as part of the team, hit me up on LinkedIn, send me a message, and then we'll talk.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
Join the Live in the Game team.
All right, guys.
Great.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Well, Generation X and Y were part of mine. Joe's like, yeah, jump on that. Boom. Zion dogs. Nice, man. That's good stuff. Like it. Well, yeah, man, it's funny. Diversity is such a cool topic. But, you're not going to see a female Mario. Because, guess what? Yeah. See, it made sense because it was written into the... Yeah. I know. Yeah. Which is what they did, yeah. So I mean, they actually did that. They tied in diversity because Mario, people get lost, and it just really upsets me because everyone gets lost in we have to have diversity for the sake of diversity instead of saying, which is what we were talking about, does it apply to the story, right? For instance, the Lord of the Rings Hobbit, right? Like Bilbo Baggins, right? And then Frodo. That's that's the vision that Tolkien had. Okay, just for example, that's the vision he had. Wolverine, he was a guy because it made sense for the story, right? Like, the anger, that testosterone, right? It made sense to fit. A woman would not have made sense in Wolverine. Okay, there you go. You're not gonna have a female Wolverine because that anger, that rage, is generally considered, the testosterone rage, right? With the that anger that he has, it just fit with that character, with the male character to work. But it's funny, something that actually goes in with diversity too, which is something I talked about in actually at UAT, was what do guys like to play more? So there's a stat. Female characters, what do women like to play more? Male characters or female characters? So guys like to play female characters generally more, and it's because they like the aesthetic. So it's funny. It's like maybe when I'm playing Skyrim or I'm playing Mass Effect and I'm creating my female character, I want this, even Saints Row 3. I had this really this ghetto mama, whatever. I don't know. I'm just kidding, but like this character that was like super awesome, and I custom built this woman that was like this ghetto lord chick, and it was awesome. But it made sense, and it was funny because some of the, I guess, the stats that the person likes to watch that avatar, they like to view that avatar better when it's the opposite sex. There was something like that in there, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Because I like to watch the woman, the female character model. It's basically the model walk around like that was it. I was like, really? I don't know. It's crazy. Oh, yeah, man. If I could pull up the one I made, you'd be like, what? It's crazy, man. She has like a fur, like a just all out bling. I was like, wow, because the game kind of like lets you do it. So I was like, all right. And actually, UAT, we did the character creation and game design class. I used that one for that. Because I spent like hours creating the character on Saints Row 3. But the character creation kit was really good on Saints Row. So, um, really good. Actually, Bethesda does a really good job at that too. What's that? Mm. But man, it's funny, the old days. Remember you make a game and you play it? Remember that? They would just make a game and you would play whatever it was. So Final Fantasy would have a male character. Oh well, that's the story I'm playing, right? You don't have to have this massive diversity in the. I say at least in the main character, at least. I mean, you can always offer that in the world, as long as it fits. But I mean, the main character itself, that's their perspective. You're trying to go for a certain market. You know, is that audience you're trying to attract by that character going to fit? And I know that Final Fantasy did this a lot, where they have like the character, who their market is they're trying to attract. So, like they would have the different stories, and each one's kind of different. Like each Final Fantasy was a different story. And also Doctor Who did that pretty well. They have unique. Let's check it out. Is that in the link? Oh no, that's the audio. Okay. Like it's nothing new, man. Nice. Damn. A double Tommy gun? Dual Tommy gun? That's good. Well, Dave, for me, when I create a character like you did here, so I have a couple like basic principles when I do. Like if I do a male character, I do a male character that I is kind of like me. So I try to create like myself in the game. So if I go for a Bethesda, something that's pretty elaborate, right, with the eyebrows and the chin and all that, I try to create somebody like it's me in the game. So I try, so I actually have two directions. I either go for making myself as fully reflective as my real self, right? In the face and all that, and the body. Or I go for somebody I like an idol, like my ideal body or like something that I would like to be. So especially, but it all depends on if it's an RPG or not, because the game type would depend on that. An art. Oh no, no worries. Okay, no worries. Yeah, absolutely. All right, mate. All right, too, man. Hope everything is okay. But yeah, I was gonna finish with this just real quick. If I do a guy character, you know, woman character, whatever, I with the woman character I go as like cool and badass as I can. But like you did right there, man. Perfect example. She has two Tommy guns, man. Gonna go to town. But dude, that Saints Row, I swear to God, when I got that Saints Row, I went crazy on it, on 3, and I spent so many hours on that female character. It's basically like somebody I was like, man, if this is real, I could go out with this chick. Basically, is what I was looking at. And I was like, I'm gonna spend hours on this and make it perfect. And something that I can respect playing too. For me with the character, it's somebody. Every time I look at the character, I want to feel a connection to it. And actually, this is a really good point I want to make to end it up. Mass Effect. Remember when I was talking about Mass Effect? Well, the first Mass Effect, it's kind of funny because the first one to the third one and to the fourth one. Originally, there was the other game, right? So they have Mass Effect, and then they had oh my God, draw a blank. Drag the D&D one. You know what I'm talking about? The other they made the other series. Oh my God, it's like the dragons one with like witches and then wizards. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. No, 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 no. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Mass Effect. Oh, no, they made. Well, okay, so their medieval series that they made. So basically, when they made it, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. But so in the original game that they made before they made Mass Effect, they had that series, and so you had no voice for the protagonist, and that was a huge turnoff. Because it's funny, because I originally went with Mass Effect first, and then I went back to play their other series, right? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this, and then the protagonist had no voice, right? No real voice, and it totally turned me off. Because I originally attract to that voice, like every time I hear the voice, I know that's me, when I'm playing the game. So it formed that bond between me and the character, right? And I think that's something too. Like, who is your audience? How are they going to form that bond with the character you made? As a designer. So if you make these characters, can your audience bond with them? And for me, when I went back after having the voice edition, it really turned me off to playing it because I was like, well, I can't hear them. Everyone else had a voice, but the main characters, so it really turned me off. It's as far as not having that connection with my own AI that I was playing, it turned me off. So, I mean, dude, that's something that we could go into in a future topic. I think, like, connecting with your, character. How do you, connecting with the character. Yeah, you're playing, and how do you do that? Like, and I know that some people are like, it's just a character I'm playing, but you know, it's also something that people really get into. So yeah, the people really get involved with. So yeah, what was that game? It's a Dragon Age. Dragon Age. Dragon Age. There you go. Dragon Age. You've all heard of that one. That one. Oh yeah, man. Okay. It was a good night, man. It was a good podcast. I liked the night. Direct me, yo. Well, dude, guys, I'm super excited about like upcoming stuff. We got all kinds of events, man. I'm, I'm pumped, man. Why don't we have Comic Con? The benefits and no, the pros and cons next week. Okay. Hey, Dave. Thanks for being an awesome lead, dude. You're doing a really good job, bro. Like you are like made for this position. I don't know, just the way you are, you just fit, man. So I'm excited. Are you having fun with it? Just do it. Okay, cool. No, I mean, it sounds like you're having fun with it. So you're definitely, we all fit our own role, right? I mean, all of us on here. You're definitely a really good conductor, though. So just we're gonna get more experience, but just keep it up, man. You're doing a good job. So they're keeping us in line, man. We just need to draw out Joe more, but that's your job. Just say Nintendo more. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So. You just have to say Nintendo. You just have to say that every now and then, just like sprinkle it in. Politics, Nintendo, and they're like, oh, no, it's kidding. No, no. Yeah. Nice. No, it's perfect, man. I really like our groove we have, so I'm cool. Cool with it. Hey Dave, y- can I pick next week's topics? Yeah, I'll pick two of them. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I already did. See, there you go. I already did. But no, but I'll pick two. So why don't we go with that one, and then I'll do another one. Yeah. Yeah, I know that this week, because we were like gonna do last week, so I was a little off there. But I mean, I can totally jump into topics. I mean, pretty. I know when I'm up to speed on a lot of things, so but it's not too bad. Yeah, for sure. So, absolutely. All right, man. I'll send you the topics on Slack. Mm, okay. I will be picking the topics for next week. On the on Discord. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm too busy looking at that character with the Tommy guns. Oh, there we go. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll send that here in a minute. Nice. Hey, Dave. Real quick before you go, you there? You still? Are you there still?